Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of the Let the Right Ones In podcast. I'm your host T. Again, I'm flying solo, and I just wanted to talk about something a little bit more serious this week. Since the last few weeks, everyone has been kind of honed in on mental health and mental illnesses. I just wanted to kind of take a moment to talk about the portrayal of mental illnesses within media. I've been thinking about doing this podcast for a while. A lot of my favorite movies feature protagonists that kind of have mental illnesses, like Donnie Darko, for example. Even Bandersnatch recently featured a character that had a mental illness. And I think it's, as someone who is trying to enter in the mental health field, I just finished the requirements for my degree in psychology, my bachelor's degree. But I am not a mental health professional. But as someone who's always been interested in psychology, and as someone who has been diagnosed with mental illnesses, I've always been kind of interested in how they're portrayed, how people see it, and kind of how people view and think of mental illnesses as a whole. Interesting to see how Hollywood kind of portrays it and the reaction to that, and how people generally as a whole portray it. So this is kind of a topic that I wanted to talk about for a while, and I figured since it's kind of in the forefront of everyone's minds, that why not talk about it. Just a few disclaimers before we get started. Even though I have taken courses, I'm not a mental health professional. These are all things stemming from my own personal thoughts, feelings, opinions, and experiences. And the other thing that I just wanted to say is that I do understand that there is a lot of media that does get mental illness right and how it's portrayed, but there's a lot of problematic aspects of it that I feel still need to be addressed. So just kind of throwing those things out there before we get started. Outside of media, there's a lot of general misconceptions about mental illness. It's a lot more common than people would think. People think that not too many people are affected by it, but as a matter of fact, according to statistics from 2014, 1 in 5 American adults experience a mental health issue. 1 in 10 young people experience a period of major depression, and 1 in 25 Americans have lived with a serious mental illness like schizophrenia, bipolar, or major depression. Suicide is also the 10th leading cause in the U.S. as of 2014. This figure may be different now that we're in 2019, but even looking at these statistics from 2014, it's clear that there's a common misconception that mental illness only affects a certain subset, when in actuality it affects people of, all genders, all races, all orientations, rich, poor, all walks of life. There's also a common misconception that people with mental illnesses are weak or flawed, and that they just have to try harder or pray harder, or that there's nothing really wrong with them. They just don't know how to handle life. As a Black person who has suffered mental illness, I've heard that a lot. You're not praying hard enough. You're just not good at handling life. This is just life, things like that. You just need to try harder. When in actuality, I really did have a problem, and people just didn't understand that. I'm sure people outside of the Black community have been told this, but a lot of friends that I've spoken to that are also Black have also told me, family members and other friends kind of just shrugged off their problem or their illness because they just thought that they were weak and couldn't handle life. But that's not true. Mental illness can be genetic. It can be because of a brain injury, illness, brain chemistry, trauma, abuse, a history of mental health problems within the family. So, like I said, genetic or biological. So these are also some things that are commonly misconceived. And so I think because we have these biases in real life, we kind of carry them over into the media that we create and consume. As a writer, and for any other kind of writers out there or storytellers out there, I feel that it's important to understand and know these kind of things, because if we're going to write about characters with these illnesses or going through these things, it's best that we have an understanding of that. So we're not portraying people in a way that's inaccurate or doing damage to a community or people with an illness per se. Hopefully that makes sense. Basically what I'm trying to say is that not only storytellers, but as people, it's important to kind of be educated and be aware of these things and biases, especially if we're going to tell the story or perspective of someone with these things, so we're not further propelling these stereotypes and problematic issues that we're going to start to talk about. So with all that out of the way as well, let's kind of jump into the meat and bones of this. So you could say there are two sides of the coin when discussing the problematic issues that we see with the portrayal of mental illnesses in media. The first we have is romanticizing mental illness and glamorizing it. And then the other half that we have is, of course, demonization and villainizing mental illness. As far as that goes, I want to talk about romanticizing mental illness, which is basically glamorizing it, making mental illness look beautiful or cool, portraying it in a way that kind of trivializes it and makes it look neat, romantic, and cool, consumable. A lot of people, well, not a lot of people, I've seen people use mental illness or the guise of it as a way to seek attention, claiming that they've had depression, anxiety, other mood or personality disorders as a way to garner attention. Posting on Facebook and Tumblr how they're feeling oh so sad and oh so anxious, when it's just kind of situational. It's not really them having generalized anxiety disorder or major depressive disorder or another kind of mental health disorder that cause these things to come up. And a lot of people may ask, well, why would you even do that? Which I agree. I think it's kind of shitty to fake any kind of illness. But some people, I feel like, may not know that they're kind of faking it per se. There's lots of quizzes out there on BuzzFeed or other sites that are like, take this quiz and see if you have depression or anxiety. And that's not necessarily the case. Like, you just may be going through something at that time that's kind of situational that's making you feel this way, not necessarily meaning that you have a disorder. Like, I'm not discrediting the use of these quizzes because they can be useful to bring to your doctor and say, hey, I've been feeling this kind of way, let's talk about it. So it is helpful in the way of getting you a diagnosis. But some people kind of take that to heart and then kind of internalize that and kind of use it for their identity, but then in the form of using that to get attention as well as validation from people. And like I said, you may wonder, why would anyone do that? Well, the attention that you can get from it, I mean, it's addicting. It truly is. For me, I don't like letting people know when I'm having a low moment. I do my best to kind of avoid that and keep it to myself, try to soldier on or whatever and not let anyone know. But posting vague and sad things, of course people are going to reach out to you and going to ask you if you're okay, if you need anything, if you're feeling alright. And that attention can be addictive for someone who may not necessarily have gotten a lot of attention in their lives or who kind of desperately need it or crave it. And they may just keep going and perpetuating things to the point where it's just really intense and there's no return. People can also kind of use that to attract people. Like, oh, she's so deep and brooding because she's so sad all the time and I want to make them happy. I want to fix them. Or for guys, it's like, oh, he's mysterious and aloof. He's got problems. I can fix him. I can make him better. And that's not really the case. People with mental illnesses can have happy and healthy relationships. I've been with my boyfriend for 2-3 years now. I think going on 3, maybe 4. We've been together for a really long time. And I've also carried on, relationships successfully, give or take, with others before him as well. I have a lot of other friends who are mentally ill that have perfectly normal relationships. I'm not saying that you shouldn't date someone with a mental illness or avoid relationships with them, but I'm saying just pursuing that because they have a mental illness, pursuing them because you think that you're going to fix them. That's not good or healthy in a way. That's fetishizing their issues, and that's not cool or right. Just in the same way that, you shouldn't fetishize someone's race or sexual orientation or something like that. That's kind of messed up in its own way, but that does come into play with romanticizing mental illness. Other people treat mental illness like it's a quirk, like having it is going to get them into UA high school. It's not really a quirk, and we see that oftentimes in shows like comedies like The Big Bang Theory. I believe one of the characters, Sheldon, I think he has a mental disorder from some of the articles that I've read online. And then another huge example of it is Monk. If you remember that show, like basically he was a detective that had OCD, and it made him like a million times better at crime solving because of the OCD, which isn't accurate at all. Having OCD doesn't suddenly make you an ace detective or anything like that, or even more obsessed with small, minute details. That's not really how the disorder works. So, to kind of play it or use it for a quirk is a way that we kind of romanticize and trivialize it. There's also making mental illness seem tragic and beautiful. The biggest culprit of this is 13 Reasons Why. A lot of people loved it, but I wasn't that big of a fan. I didn't watch the second season because I thought the first season was enough. And I definitely wasn't going to watch the second season after I heard about the infamous broom scene. Not for me. So I decided to skip that. But 13 Reasons Why is a lot of what's kind of wrong with portrayals of mental illness in the sense of romanticizing it, particularly suicide. The way that they did Hannah's death. Spoilers alert for 13 Reasons Why if you haven't seen it. But the way they made that scene kind of against the advice and wishes of other mental health practitioners who were advising on the show, they made her death seem beautiful and tragic, and they made it seem as a whole that everyone was sorry for what they did to her. Now, there were a lot of people that did things wrong, but Hannah also did some things wrong. And this isn't to say that people who commit suicide have done something wrong. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is, when it comes to 13 Reasons Why, even though there were some reasons that Hannah had that she considered valid, that other people would also consider valid, it was framed in a way that everyone was sorry and affected. I don't think that's accurate. Oftentimes, people will hurt us. People will do shitty things to us. People will humiliate us and just stomp on us, bully us, make us feel like shit. And if we were to give up and if we were to kill ourselves, a lot of the people would not be sorry. A lot of the people wouldn't care. I hate to say that, but I feel like that's the truth. A lot of people that hurt us are sleeping just fine while we're holding on to these things, these hurts. A lot of people don't remember that. Like, there have been instances where I've ran into people who bullied me in school, and they acted like nothing bad ever happened. They actually seemed kind of happy to see me. And I always kind of thought that was weird. I was like, why are you acting like happy to see me when you were being like such a piece of shit to me? You know what I mean? So I feel like sending the message to vulnerable people, particularly teenagers who are getting bullied, who are being humiliated and hurt, that if they were to kill themselves, that everyone involved would feel sorry. That's not the case. A lot of people may not even realize what they've done to you is wrong, or how deeply it affected you. And like I said, they're sleeping just fine. So to frame it in a way that it's beautiful, it's tragic, that anyone who has ever wronged you, who has pushed you to this point, is going to feel bad and sorry, I don't think that's a good message to send to people, particularly young people who may say, you know what, I am going to make these people sorry. And they're going to be so sad. And they're going to throw away their lives. And it'll all be for nothing. Instead of making people who hurt them feel sorry, they're going to hurt their family and friends and people who actually cared about them instead. Just because you're ending your own pain in that way doesn't mean that you're not transferring that burden to other people. And I think 13 Reasons Why did show that. It was obvious Clay was hurting. It was obvious Hannah's parents were hurting. But Hannah didn't get to see that. She didn't get to understand that. And I also think that that was kind of shadowed over, so to speak, with everyone just feeling sorry and panicking about what happened to Hannah as opposed to who was left behind to suffer. So I completely agree that in that sense, 13 Reasons Why is not the best media when it comes to portrayal of suicidal tendencies and trauma and things like that, because again, it's perpetuating that falsehood that anyone who has ever hurt you or wronged you is going to know and feel sorry, even if you leave a note saying, hey, you did this, you did that to me, and that was really shitty of you. Like, yeah, they may feel shitty and sorry for a little bit, but not for long. That's just kind of my piece on that. Overall, romanticizing mental illnesses is bad because, like I said, it makes it seem desirable and coveted. It makes having a mental illness seem cool and wanted and in and hip and quirky when it's not. It can be really difficult for a lot of people depending on the severity. So I don't think it's right or cool to kind of portray it in that way, to make it seem like the bee's knees to have and something that's desirable. There's nothing wrong with having a mental illness. As someone who has it, for me personally, it's about embracing it. Like, understanding that this thing isn't me, but it is a part of me. It's a part of my life. And I just have to embrace it, live with it, realize that when I'm feeling or thinking a certain way, that isn't the real me. It's my illness talking. So it's all, for me personally, about being mindful of that. And I feel like it's something that I personally don't want, but I have it, so I have to deal with it. And I feel like it's that way for a lot of people who are mentally ill. We don't want it. We don't want to deal with it, but it's kind of there and we have to. So for someone who is perfectly mentally well adjusted and healthy to want a mental illness, I feel like that's kind of not cool. And, it's not something that people should desire or covet or want to have or anything like that. And by romanticizing it, turning it into like a joke or something beautiful or something desirable, we're also trivializing the severity of it. People have varying degrees of severity for their mental illnesses. Some have it mild to moderate. Some have it severe to where it interferes with their life 24/7. By romanticizing it and making it look neat, cool, shiny, fun, trivializes that. It makes what a person's going through and struggling with not seem like a big deal when it is a big deal and it's hard. That's kind of the bad side to romanticizing mental illness. It does more harm than good to portray it in this magical, shiny package for people. Now, on the other side of that coin, we have demonizing mental illness. This is making mental illness look bad, scary, like it's the worst thing in the world. It is pretty bad, but like I said, people have it manifest in different ways and have it be mild to severe. We shouldn't villainize people with mental illnesses or make mental illness seem like this huge, scary thing. While it can be, with the proper education and tools, it necessarily isn't. A lot of things that we see the most when it comes to demonizing the mentally ill is in horror movies. We see a lot of people descending into madness, a lot of murderers and serial killers exhibiting some form of mental illness, like Michael Myers, Norman Bates, Patrick Bateman, Split, the guy from Split as well. We have these inaccurate or extreme portrayals of mental illness and the mentally ill. We have them seen as violent, dangerous, a loose cannon, and I even see this in films that I like. Like, I love American Psycho. Split was okay. I liked Psycho as well. But the portrayal of the mentally ill is inaccurate. Norman Bates, he had dissociative identity disorder, same with Split. Patrick Bateman was clearly narcissistic, antisocial personality disorder, which people commonly call sociopathy, psychopathy, even though those are outdated terms. And they just kind of take things to the extreme, making it seem like these people are bloodthirsty killers and they're off the deep end, they're going to harm you and things like that, which isn't the case. And like I said, even films that I liked, like Donnie Darko, even Bandersnatch, the characters all were kind of unhinged. And so when we think of the mentally ill, we have these stereotypes that they're unhinged, they're dangerous, they're going to harm us, it's extreme, and it's very volatile, that we're not safe around this mentally ill person, which isn't always the case. Like, yeah, sure, some mentally ill people can be dangerous, but so can people who aren't mentally ill. So to kind of lump all people who are mentally ill as dangerous and scary and violent is quite unfair and quite inaccurate, especially when you're using things like hallucinations, outbursts, disorganized speech, things like that to describe someone who's mad, a killer. So not exactly the most fair or accurate portrayal of people with a mental illness. And then the other thing is they make all mental illnesses and disorders look alike. You'll see a lot of movies, especially horror movies, with the common thread that everyone who has a mental disorder has it severe, has them being quirky, intelligent, and things like that. And that's not necessarily the case. Not all mental disorders are severe. Not all mental disorders make you smarter. In fact, that's got nothing to do with it. It just kind of makes all mental disorders, like I said, look extreme and severe, when not everyone with a mental disorder has symptoms that are severe. It may be manageable and not spiraling out of control, like we see a lot in media. And the other thing is they make people who are mentally ill kind of have this distinct look. If you've seen any kind of horror movie or a lot of psychological thrillers, they make those who are mentally ill kind of have this distinct look. And by the distinct look, I mean they have kind of messy or crazy hair. Some of them may dress more alternatively. Some of them may have messy clothes, not really caring about their appearance to the level that others would. Or they may be hyper aware of their appearance. Like in American Psycho, Patrick Bateman was super concerned about his appearance, trying to make himself look super presentable and things like that. And we also kind of see that with Norman Bates as well, trying to make yourself look normal and presentable. But then we have cases like Donnie Darko, Suburban Gothic, even Bandersnatch, where the characters have this kind of disheveled, messy look a little bit. Kind of like a wild look, so to speak. Kind of a caricature. So to say that everyone who's mentally ill has this kind of either super neat and organized look or this super disheveled look isn't accurate. Like, sure, there may be people with mental illnesses that want to look neat. Other people who may not or cannot take care of their personal appearance. But for the most part, there's no distinctive look for the mentally ill. People who are mentally ill are just normal people. And to kind of just look at someone and be like, he looks like he's mentally ill. it's a little fucked up. They also make it seem that recovery is impossible. In Psycho, Split, Donnie Darko, and Bandersnatch, kind of to go back to those, particularly Donnie Darko and Bandersnatch, where the protagonists are medicated, it makes it seem like the medication does nothing, that they're never going to recover and get better from their illnesses, which isn't accurate. A lot of people who do get treatment for their mental health issues do recover or improve their quality of life a lot. It's irresponsible to say that meds won't help, that therapy won't help, because they can. I currently don't take medication, but for a time I did, and it did help me. Initially starting out, I did feel a little sick, but after I got over that, I started to feel better. I was able to think clearly. I wasn't having as many fucked up thoughts as I was having. So, it can be helpful. And to frame mental illnesses as never being recoverable is honestly bullshit. Because people can and do recover, or at least improve their quality of life, if they do seek treatment. Treatment doesn't work for everyone, but for a lot of people it does. And to kind of perpetuate the myth that it doesn't is also fucked up. It's keeping people who could or would probably seek help from not getting it, because again, they think that it's impossible to recover from it, or other people around them may find it impossible to recover from it. So what can we do to help or stop this? I think the main thing is to get educated, particularly as people, and particularly if you're a storyteller, if you're a writer, an artist, a screenplay writer, a movie director, a producer, any kind of storyteller, or hell, even just an average Joe. It's super important to educate yourself about mental illness. If we are going to tell the stories of people who are mentally ill, if we are accurately going to share their experience or how they see the world, how are we going to do that if we don't know or understand it? How are we going to be accurate and truthful if we're doing it in a way that's more to mock or hurt? I understand that a lot of the medias that I mentioned probably did not have ill intentions, and I understand that, and that's fine. Media is to more consume for entertainment, but I feel like even if you're trying to entertain someone, you should do your best to be as accurate as possible so you're not hurting anyone in the process of entertaining others. So I feel like education is important. Read up on it, volunteer, talk to people who are mentally ill, get their insights and opinions on what you're doing. And then kind of try to also avoid the things that I mentioned above. Just try to be fair with it. Don't demonize or romanticize it, but just be accurate. Be truthful in what you're doing. The truth can vary for different people. Like I said, mental illness comes in all types of severities, all types of shapes and sizes. So it's important to do it in a way that's responsible, that's not demonizing or romanticizing the thing, and be realistic with it. A lot of shows like BoJack Horseman, I feel, are great. I feel like BoJack Horseman does an excellent job of demonstrating depression. There have been times when I've watched it and I was like, damn, that's me. I've been there. Being realistic in that sense, creating fleshed out characters that are more than their illnesses, because we are. People who are mentally ill are more than their illness, just like someone who has cancer is more than their cancer, just like someone with learning disability is more than their learning disability. It's important to create fully fleshed out characters within the media that we're consuming to get the most accurate portrayal of who these people are, who the character is. People who are mentally ill are more than depression, more than anxiety, more than schizophrenia. And I feel like that's the best way to go about it, to say, yes, this is something that the character deals with, but this is not the character. They are not a walking, talking embodiment of the thing, unless that's what you're trying to go for, like a metaphorical thing. So, I guess we'll wrap it up here, guys. Sorry if this was a little bit more serious than I've been in past weeks, but like I said, this is something that I've wanted to talk about for a while. I've been kind of playing around with the idea, and since mental health and mental illnesses were at the forefront these last few weeks, I just wanted to throw it out there while it was still something on everyone's minds. I will link some mental health resources below in the description. I'll also link a few interesting articles that I found that discuss the portrayal of mental illnesses within the media that you may find interesting. I did, and they were of great help recording this podcast, getting, my notes and thoughts together. I hope this was informative. Like I said, I'm sorry it was a little bit more serious than I've been the last few weeks, but it is an important topic, and while it was on everyone's minds, I just kind of wanted to capitalize on it. There is an update video on the channel. If you haven't watched it, please do. I mentioned that we'll have a social media, Twitter. Twitch is coming within the next few weeks where I'll be streaming, and then that Dark Side of Animation series will start to roll out with either next week or the week after. I'm not sure if I want to do something a little heavier after this one. Kind of may do something a little bit more lighthearted to break it up, so it's all not doom and gloom here. But anyway, I hope this was informative. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I guess that's it. I will see you guys next week. Bye. Bye, bye, bye. Bye.